I'm Mark Simon, and I'll be doing the interviewing today. I'm here today, and we are here from the Silverlake History Collective to interview Mark Thompson and Malcolm Boyd.
Malcolm. I'm Mark.
Okay. And Mark and Malcolm are activists and writers. They've been together for 28 years and have made Silverlake their home for 25 years. In 2005, Malcolm was given the Unitas Award from the Union Theological Seminary. The citation read, "Poet, priest, pioneer, for his activism in the civil rights movement, for his lasting influence as a role model and mentor for gay clergy, and for his best-selling spiritual classic, Are You Running With Me, Jesus?" A briefest outline of Malcolm's career trajectory, his life's work in the middle of a high-profile career in Hollywood that saw him being elected first president of the Television Producers Association of Hollywood and founding a production company with none other than Mary Pickford herself. Malcolm decided to study for the priesthood. That decision made the front pages of Variety and the LA Times. He was ordained an Episcopal priest in 1955. By 1961, as clergy, he was participating in the early civil rights struggles in the South, taking part in the original freedom rides and voter registration drives, working alongside Martin Luther King. In 1965, he wrote a book of prayers, Are You Running With Me, Jesus?, which has sold over 1 million copies. He's written 27 books. Malcolm again made headlines as a priest, coming out as a gay man in the 1970s. Now, who does such a one as this have for a partner? And it's Mark Thompson. Mark helped found the Gay Students Collective at San Francisco State University in 1973. He worked for the national gay and lesbian news magazine, The Advocate, for 2 decades as senior editor, feature writer, and photographer. And some would say those 2 decades that Mark was there were the great decades of that magazine. Mark has 8 books to his credit, and 4 of those 8, Gay Soul, Gay Spirit, Gay Body, and I include Leatherfolk, are central works, truly central works in the canon of gay literature. Thompson holds a master's degree in clinical psychology and has worked as a counselor to gay youth and people with AIDS. In 2007, he was given a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Lambda Literary Foundation, and in June of 2009, the city of West Hollywood honored Mark and Malcolm for their decades of outstanding contributions to the gay and lesbian community. So here we are in Silverlake with Mark and Malcolm. And my first question, and we're going to focus on Silverlake.
Right.
Why Silverlake? Why, when you were choosing a place to live all those years ago, why Silverlake? Any particular reasons, any memories about Silverlake that made you decide this?
Well, because it's the best place to live in Los Angeles.
What makes it the best place for you?
I mean, I had a personal reason. We met in '84 when I was transferred down here, when the Advocate moved lock, stock, and barrel. And it took us a couple of years. We met right away and liked each other, but there was an age difference and a religious difference. And so we said we'd just take our time and really travel and get to know one another. And then finally one night in the famed Pierre's Los Feliz Inn here in nearby Los Feliz, Malcolm literally got on bended knee and presented me with a ring in front of everyone. So how could I say no?
How many could claim that?
And what was the place? Where was it again? Tell us about this place.
Vermont. It was Upper Vermont. Vermont near Riverside. I've been there for years.
It's the best restaurant.
It was.
Yeah, I mean, nothing's
gone.
ever approached it, but anyway, we had a lot of fun there.
Yeah, we went to, Malcolm thought, well, then we have to get a house, and we thought maybe Hancock Park, and I thought, well, that's a little pricey. And I said, but I really love Silverlake because it reminds me so much of where I come from, which is, I'm a 3rd generation Northern Californian. So the hills and the trees and the water and the more relaxed cultural attitude, and it was more integrated. All kinds of people who lived here. So we asked our friend Ivy Bettini, who was a real estate agent then, to help us. How many houses did we look at?
Oh, gosh, dozens.
Dozens.
We wouldn't let our dogs sleep in them.
And some finally, it just took months, and looking at, some were way overpriced and some were beyond fixer-uppers. And we said, Ivy, why can't she? She said, I think there's one place left on the list.
About 6 p.m.
About 6 p.m. on the last day. And she said, it's just right around the corner. And so we trooped up those steps to our house, and we just got as far as into the front room. We didn't even look at the rest of the house, and we just said, this is it, wrap it up, we'll take it.
However, I then went through the thing that you can't show the real estate agent that you like it, because the price could go up. So I'm acting insouciant, informable, don't know. What about that color scheme over there, But anyway, of course, we fell in love with it.
We later found out that the house had been owned by at least 2 generations previous of gay men.
Wow.
And then one I met on the street one day, and we were talking, and he and his lover had lived here, and then the lover had died of AIDS.
Just shortly after.
So all of this is a part of history.
And the house looks quite different. It was all open to the street. None of the garden was there.
Huh.
This room was after the Northridge earthquake. This was just an open patio, and everything collapsed. So I built this room.
Yes, you did.
We've redone every room.
Now we're on Hyperion Boulevard. We're just a block, for all you Silverlakers or people who know something about Silver Lake. We're just more or less a block from Trader Joe's
And Gelson's.
and Gail's. But I mention that only because I want to know about the neighborhood. Has it changed for you? How has the neighborhood changed? This area, has it changed?
Well, I was a young man working in Hollywood, as I think you indicated, the president of the Television Producers Association, which meant, of course, that I was producing television shows, some of the early ones, and they were fun in a way. We had Gloria Swanson on one of our shows the week before she started Sunset Boulevard.
Wow.
And we decided to do something with hats, like with Swanson, the great Dom. So Mr. Frederick was the hat man, and the hats were sent in an armored car to the television studio. And then for some reason, Gloria was in a fun mood, and she's sort of playing with them and throwing the hats. And then Mr. Frederick said, I'll never work with you again. You don't throw my hats, So, and then another show I did was Hollywood in 3 Dimensions. We had Edgar Bergen in his TV debut. We had everybody. Really.
Any of it shot in the neighborhood? I mean, there were so many studios that were happening in Silver
No, these
Lake.
were not too far from here, but that wasn't significant really. But I was just about to say the neighborhood I didn't know, because if I came into the neighborhood to shoot a film, I didn't live in it. I bought a house in Hollywood, and then being with Mary Pickford, Pickfair was in Beverly Hills, so I didn't really have contact with Silver Lake at that period, nor was I aware of it particularly.
Huh.
So it's been a discovery trip, and something I've enjoyed a lot. Mark, incidentally, could run for mayor of Silver Lake because he knows everybody, and they love him, and he also loves them back.
Well,
but darling, it's true.
well, let's answer the question, because this is about Silver Lake. I walk everywhere in the neighborhood, and I try to say hi to everyone.
That's why he's mayor.
I like to get to know who my neighbors are.
Where do you walk, Mark? Do you find any particular spots?
I walk up to the streets, and I walk around wherever out to the Shakespeare. Not great but just
Uh-huh.
within my little comfort
Sure.
sphere, because it's changed, but not that much actually.
Mm-hmm.
They put that god awful tower up across the street, which we fought.
Oh,
That
right.
abomination.
Uh-huh.
That it was a nice old single family house. And then the old man who lived in a similar house, he just died. He raised his family there, and he just died last year. And they're restoring the house. And then the nice lady who just lives next to the Baller Hardware store, which has been owned by the Cali family, operated for 4 generations.
Mhm.
And we know all the Callies, and they're wonderful, and they're friends. And Mrs. Dagmar Popoff lived in the house, and we were very good friends of hers. She had lived in the same house and raised her family her entire life, and she lived to her 90s. So there's been some change, but we're talking about deep neighborhood roots,
Also, the other day, Mark happened to be away. Every Saturday, we go to Gelson's for the big shop. And so they know us, of course, and we know them. So the other day, Mark was in San Francisco for something, and I went up to get milk or something. And then the clerk said, "You're alone." And I said, "Well, it's not desperate. It's not suicidal, I hear it."
Oh, for Christ's sake.
He's in San Francisco
No, it's in New York.
night, But it became an occasion in Gelson that I would be there alone. So consequently, we become identified in the neighborhood. We all play a role. Everyone does, you see.
We're a very visible gay couple in the neighborhood.
It's so interesting to me that as a gay man, Malcolm, who had so much time in Hollywood, you were saying before you moved here, you were unaware of Silverlake.
When I was here as a kid, if you will, we're talking about the
40s.
the
Right.
mid-40s. I was ambitious, not interested in neighborhoods or anything,
Mhm.
but just making a success. And then Mary Pickford and her husband, Buddy Rogers, and I formed Pickford Rogers Boyd, a producing company. And so, I was busy.
Uh-huh.
And I wasn't into a social thing particularly. Also, then it was people forget how kind of grim the gay scene was. I wish people would remember it a little more. I remember there were 2 men I knew, and I knew they were gay. And then one day in my office, the phone rings, and one of them is sobbing. And the other, of course, has changed the locks on the door, so he can't get his clothes. Gay life wasn't a great deal of fun at a point. So let's take a few minutes for the generation to just bow down and say thank you to some pioneers, rather than think, kids, we did it all 24 hours ago, because I got news for you, we didn't.
And of course, the greatest pioneer of our generation lived and created so much just a few blocks from here.
Well, that's where I was when Malcolm was telling his story. He forgot that I was in New York attending the conference just 2 weekends ago on Harry Hay.
Wow.
And, we were part of the committee that in April put the sign on the Cove steps.
We also had Harry's 70th birthday
here.
Wow.
We're here sitting.
We had a big birthday party.
Yeah.
So we were good friends with Harry. And
he was a lovely man.
So we're aware of
Yeah.
the gay history of Silverlake, and there's quite a bit hidden in these hills, like many people don't know that the Advocate magazine was founded in the basement of the movie studio, which is now the Prospect Studios, but there used to
Oh.
be the ABC
Really?
Just on the-
really? Sure, of course. It's
on Talmadge
Talmadge
Avenue,
and Prospect.
which is just a stone's throw from here.
Someone working there just made use of their equipment to get the paper out
Well,
without their knowledge.
because that's where they would print the sides for the soap operas. They shot a lot of soap operas, so every night they would have to print the next day's scripts, and then some of the guys would stay over and print the first issues of the Advocate, which was just a newsletter size,
Sure.
and they were sold for $0.25 a piece under the bars, such as they were.
Not unlike Lisa Ben printing her
Right.
her mimeograph, again in the entertainment
And then,
industry.
of course, just down the street, the famous Black Cat, we say riots or civil
yeah.
disturbance, which was 2.5 years before the Stonewall riots in
course.
New York.
And let me ask, that was on my agenda. So when you were here, you were certainly here and working. You were not cognizant of the Black Cat Riots around the time. No.
There was no activism then at all. It was survival.
Uh-huh.
We were working in the industry, and then any view of gay life was so negative, as I just indicated with the story.
Right.
It was such a struggle for existence. So, we could kind of leapfrog here a little bit, because I came to Silverlake in terms of now, and West Hollywood would be an alternative, and I prefer Silverlake.
Why?
West Hollywood's always on parade, and it's Silverlake is subdued. Silverlake grants you privacy if you want it. Silverlake is, of course, immensely gay, but because it's gay, it doesn't have to make a point of it every 5 minutes. And that's a little refreshing on occasion, too. So, in other words, Silverlake fits me in terms of what I want about a locale.
Well, it's not the go youth culture. I mean,
Right.
it seems like we're a more harmonious neighborhood, and there's a greater mix of interesting, lovely people here.
Absolutely.
Very dedicated to the notion of making and preserving our community. I'll just give a very brief example. We mentioned our friend Stuart Timmons, who just lived up a block from here. And at the corner here, for a couple decades, there was a very famous Japanese restaurant called the Zen Restaurant. Remember that? And then we used to go there all the time. And the little lady just got old and retired and sold the business to what we assumed and she assumed would be a nice businessman. Well, the guy was a creep, and he just immediately sublet it out to these hip-hop club promoters who utterly trashed the building, began to quickly trash the neighborhoods. We were in contact with the parties that would go on to 4 or 5 in the morning, these raves. The number of car burglaries, home break-ins, and I hate to say it, rapes.
A criminal element.
Rapes, just drug dealing. We'd come and find used condoms and smashed liquor bottles all up and down Hyperion. Stuart got the brunt of the noise and couldn't get sleep, and so other people couldn't. So we formed a citizens committee, and we actually went down to City Hall a couple of times and talked with Labange, and formed a committee. And they said, "Well, we don't know if there's not much you can do." Finally, one Christmas Eve morning, Stuart called me and said, "I heard a shot last night." And we ran up, and there were the bullet casings right in front of the club on the sidewalk. So he scooped those up and scanned them, and we made these posters saying, "These bullets could have been for you." And we printed the guy's name of the owner on the poster. We did a little legwork, and I plastered them on every shop door within my walking zone. And we got response, and he was out of there. Sold it to this nice Israeli lady who's turned it into Barbarella. But I walked in there right after he left, and the place was gutted, and I walked in, and the building had been utterly trashed. There were holes in the wall, all kinds of just stuff smeared. I won't go on.
Well, so in other words, there was a battle.
But we had to really come
And it had to
together
be one.
as a
community.
As a community, and there were about 6 or 7 of us, and we fought and we won. And I'm a creature of the '60s.
But what I really love about Silverlake is it's quite relaxed. It's not on all the time. I can't stand people or situations that are on 24 hours a day, and it's no fun. So here you live your life. And nobody gives a damn if you're Garbo or not, because Garbo's here anyway. So it would be boring to bother Garbo with an autograph. So my point is, Silverlake's way ahead of the game. And it's...
Well, speaking of Garbo, it's probably an apocryphal story, but MGM had to teach her how to row a rowboat for a film, and they did it in the Silverlake Reservoir.
Wow.
So I just was going to leap. So I'm a real movie buff, and so I know
we share movie
movies,
buff.
you know, early days of the movies, and I know that this was called Edendale,
Of course.
and that all of the Walt Disney Studio where they made Snow White is just up the street, and Charlie Chaplin made his films just down on the corner, and the Tom Mix studio was just over that way. I mean, I love this. The cultural richness of Silverlake is fabulous.
I'm going to just briefly, because I had those years without Silverlake. I was a freedom writer in 1961 and arrested in the Pentagon we did a peace mass against the Vietnam War. In other words, years of activism, and wrote 30 books and all that stuff. So Silverlake wasn't a part of my life, in other words, for all those years. So coming back and then meeting Mark and then beginning our life together, we ended up in Silverlake, but we also chose Silverlake.
Yeah.
And have been and are very happy here. Silverlake is not pretentious. Silverlake is not a lot of phony goddamn movie stars parading around with a press agent in tow. Silverlake doesn't give a damn about you, except are you decent and are you fun and are you authentic, and if not, go away. So I don't want the message of Silverlake to get out and be inundated by a lot of the phonies from other parts of town. So
it seems to be impervious to that.
Hide the message, because we're, those of us in Silverlake are here by choice. We found a kind of Shangri-La in a way, I think.
And we felt protected here because we're in a triangle with the 5 freeways. Harry Haywood, I'd go around with Harry in his beat-up truck sometimes, and he'd say, "Well, this was the old cow paths, and some, and the old
right.
And the old joke was, late at night you get in some of these streets and you'd never get out, you'd never be heard of again, you'd get so lost." But we are surrounded, protected by this ring of hills and these 5 freeways, and it's just a very nice. Now, I don't want to get burned at the stake, but when things like the Silverlake Fair got overdone.
The junction?
Sunset Junction.
Yeah, Sunset Junction.
We withdrew.
We just said, it started, we were here when it basically got started.
And what was it like for you when it got started?
It was a lovely neighborhood event. It was basically formed to increase communication between gang kids and gay citizens, that kind of thing.
It was kind of refreshing.
It was charming, and people got together, and and then they put a chain link fence around it and started charging $20 just to buy a hot dog. And I said,
We left.
we left. That's not our Silverlake.
Anyway, that's over.
They
Yeah.
closed it down.
Right, right.
Yeah. So the future of Silverlake, I don't know. Because I think the ideal future would be Silverlake not being overly self-conscious about its qualities, not being competitive, not bringing the wrong crowd in, because there are people who, if they got a whiff of Silverlake and have a fortune, this is where they might kind of want to buy. Well, no, go on to Palm Springs, kids.
Particular spots or particular bits of history that you enjoy about the area.
Well, for me, Griffith Park is fabulous,
Uh-huh.
of course,
Yeah.
one of the great parks in the United States, and it's a few blocks from where we live. Then you have the reservoir, which is another thing, but it's lovely. I think there's an attitude of people here that I would think would be more important than anything else. In other words, who don't want a competitiveness, who don't want a keeping up with the Joneses, who don't want to be on the front page of a tabloid every 5 minutes. In other words, there's you can have a private life here.
Well, when you ask a question like that, there really isn't that much public space in Silverlake.
Right around the reservoir, we had that wonderful The Day the Stairs were
Yes, we
dedicated
had
for
the-
Harry Hay.
My Radical Fairy group, I had them organize that picnic.
Uh-huh.
Wasn't that nice?
It was wonderful. It was
Yeah.
wonderful.
In the new little park.
Right.
So if we can just keep on carving out little things like that, I think the neighborhood would benefit with these pocket parks. I wish that where the old Different Light was, that
Uh-huh.
was tragic. I was so pissed. I was going to be part of a little effort to get a plaque on it. And then I got a call one morning that the developers had come in without a permit
Right.
and just knocked it down. I ran down there and I cried. You know, the building was no great shakes, but it still had some character and some charm.
Oh, yeah.
And
Mark has brought up the name of the enemy at the developers.
yeah.
And somebody had better do something about that sort of thing, because if somebody in Persia, which doesn't exist anymore, I'm talking about, it's now global.
Yeah.
So you could be sitting in Tokyo and say, Silverlake.
Yeah. But I was by the point, dear, I was just going to make the think, like, why do we need an oil lube station on that beautiful little triangle of land? That could be a perfect little pocket park,
Right.
you know, for part of the whole, to connect that end of the plaza.
Well, then, may I introduce then a question? Where was city planning as Silverlake developed? Why wasn't there more opposition to the big developers who can come in and crush you overnight? A Different Light was an historic place, far more than Silverlake, for all of Los Angeles. A very important gay center. We'd gather there. Christopher Isherwood, John Ritchie, all sorts of people who are in history. Imagine then letting someone overnight come in and wipe it out. So this is a serious question. And also across the street from us was a couple of old houses. Well, then a developer, we were told, the developer's an interesting name, isn't it? Bought it and then put up what's there now. We dropped in at the open house. Well, I won't even go into detail because it's really bad stuff. Not good for the city, the place, the
They're
neighborhood.
almost $100,000 a unit, and they
Wow.
go straight up.
Wow.
And
The stairway, like if you'd had a beer, you could lose your balance and plummet to your death. What I'm trying to say is, I don't want to be critical per se, but I think maybe there needs to be more dialogue in Silverlake. There are some governmental things like neighborhood associations and things like that. But I think maybe we need another tier of self-government, of decision-making, because we need to save what's here. There are developers, there are people interested only in the buck, who have no interest in beauty or integrity, and they're waiting to pounce, and they pounce. Because, for example, with the development we were talking about, there was a limit on height, supposedly, but apparently there was some technical detail that let it go height.
Go a little higher.
A little higher. Well, that can kill you. So can we start talking to each other? Can there be? Can the government body have a little more power? Can there be more dialogue? I think maybe a problem of Silverlake at the moment is the isolation of different parts of it from other parts of it.
Such as?
Well, government decisions,
Uh-huh.
decisions on building. I think San Francisco does very well on this, but it's where somebody can come in and they make a bid and you say, no, we don't like the design for the front of the place. So come back in 6 months with another sketch.
So I think they're trying to do that here.
I just think they haven't yet, and I wish they would.
Well, I have a slight different opinion.
What about, you brought up a different light, and could you talk, it was such an integral part of the neighborhood, and of course, sadly, it doesn't
gone.
exist anymore. Not only here, but in San Francisco, hard to believe.
Well,
But
nowhere.
could you tell us a little bit about your relationships to a different light? You mentioned, Christopher Isherwood being there, and of course you being there. Did you read there? Did both of you?
Yes, we both read
Oh,
that.
dozens
Uh-huh.
of times.
Uh-huh.
We read dozens of times. Group events, all of our books during the 80s until the store was. We launched every one of our books there with autograph parties. We even were arrested in front of the store one time
That
because
was maddening.
it was maddening because there's those long streets and there's no crosswalks. Remember, that's got to be one of the longest walks in Silverlake.
Right.
And we had to park on the other side.
It was 10 p.m. There was no traffic.
No traffic, and we were trying to get home, and this meanest cop just knew where we were coming out of, right? And slapped a big old ticket on us. And we said, wait, we're just coming from a literary event. Oh, I don't care.
The cop virtually said, faggot,
Faggot.
put your billfold on the car.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, my God, we're citizens, we're honored, we're important people reading our work.
We have armloads of books, we're not.
Faggots! So that was outrageous. Because the charge was jaywalking. Well, I mean, in a neighborhood
That got into a
at
local
10
paper.
p.m.
What about demonstrations in Silverlake? Any political demonstrations, AIDS demonstrations? Anything happen here in particular?
Oh,
that you-
there's
we
a
had
lot of stuff.
an ACT UP demonstration parade right down on Hyperion. I was sitting here with my young brother on one of his rare visits, a straight brother, but we had just lost a middle brother to AIDS, and we were kind of in a real private grieving period at that point. And all of a sudden, we were kind of like having a wake here or something, and we heard all this commotion and this sound and this fury, and John said, "Mark, what's that? It sounds like a riot." And I ran out, and all this ACT UP right down.
Right, I think I was part of it.
Right down Hyperion.
In fact, I'm certain I was.
And I said, well, John Kirk, who's our brother who had just died, said, Kirk's spirit is marching in that parade down Hyperion with those people right now. And that helped us.
That march was endless. I don't even
Yes.
remember where we
It
ended
went
up.
on forever.
There could be a little more gay self-identity, I think, probably in Silverlake. Because I think Silverlake is so ideal. Like, you can be here and be who you are and be left alone. and there wouldn't be extremists, and you have respect and dignity. I think a further step might come along where there's a little more of community in terms of maybe gathering around a couple of issues, and
Well, that was one of the reasons why we were so furious that the Different Light building, which had remained vacant for some years, and they were going to incorporate a section of the old building into this new mixed-use condo thing. But the old building did have some architectural distinguished points, and they were going to, the city was going to demand that they designate a certain amount of square footage to be used as a community room, as a community space for gay groups to of various kinds to meet in. Well, that's off the map because now it's just a weedy lot, empty lot, and who knows how long it's going to be a dirt lot.
so history was wiped out.
So history-
You never wipe out history.
And future history was wiped out because that was in the plan.
There was also a cat.
Oh, of course.
I know.
And the cat belonged to the place.
What was
And
the cat's name? Do you
what
remember?
was the cat's name?
Oh, don't ask me. I'm not just kitty cat.
I think the cat's name was Garbo. I'm kidding.
Yeah, it sounds kind of familiar, Malcolm. It does.
It would, given this neighborhood.
But in other words, we all need, now we're under another subject, but we need to treat history differently, somewhat reverently.
Well, they're redoing the Black Cat space, and I was just walking down there doing a little shopping at the cheese store, which we love. The
Great cheese store.
You know, on the sense of
The Silverlake
Silverlake.
cheese store.
Oh, it's our favorite place.
The LA Times said it's the best in the city.
Oh, it's one of our icons, and we think the owner is a great guy, and so we
He's
always
marvelous.
talk about stuff. But anyways, walking, I noticed that they're redoing it as a restaurant or nightclub. I think they're going to call it the Black Cat, but then the Black Cat sign had been taken down.
Oh.
Now, are they going to put it back up? Is there going to be a little plaque put there, or what? You know.
There was a plaque designated, and it would be great. Could you tell us a little bit about the Black Cat Riots, or an uprising, sort of, as you know of them?
Well, I would know more about that than you. Apparently, it was just as 1967 was turning 1968. You know, at that magic moment. Everyone sings Auld Lang Syne and reaches over and gives, a kiss for the new year. And just at that point, the police burst into the bar, and another bar, just where the Circus of Books is. What's the name called? It'll come to me. But they raided both, but most famously the Black Cat. And they had wagons, and they viciously beat people. Matter of fact, they took one man out in the street and they beat him so hard that they burst his spleen, and he had to be rushed to the hospital. And this kind of thing had been going on for decades from the LAPD, and it was all trumped up. And the alternative press, there was no gay press at that point.
This is, I think, 1967.
67.
Yeah.
Right. People just had it. So a couple months later, community organizers, and there was about 600 or 700 people gathered with signs and saying, "No more of this." And the police ringed the whole neighborhood, but they didn't move in. They didn't say one word because they knew what would happen. But it wasn't a riot, but it was a mass demonstration saying enough, and we're not going to take it anymore.
All in the neighborhood. And of course, significantly, several years before the Stonewall
Before the
uprising
Stonewall.
happened right here. They say there's a great book called Mapping Los Angeles, and the woman and it's about gay and lesbian Los Angeles, and she calls Los Angeles, in fact, or Silverlake, I forget. She says it's the greatest secret in the history of gay and lesbian history.
MCC started here just around the same time. Troy Perry, said, well, we've had enough, and there's got to be a place, and so he founded MCC, the first congregation in somebody's apartment, not far from here.
Wow!
In somebody's living room, around the same time.
Speaking of secrecy, if you went out in the street tonight, any part of LA, West Hollywood, here, any place, and asked people to tell you who Harry Hay is, they'd have to tell you they didn't know. So let's get off let's be real. Because we're not communicating.
We got the sign up, but
I don't mean that.
But who knows that it's there?
Well,
right.
But I'm talking about even the message isn't through. This is where history is so terribly important, because if you don't understand it, it has to repeat itself, and please don't repeat that.
I think in where they put that new kind of weird little pocket park where they painted on the street.
Right, on Sunset.
I'm sorry, I still don't know what to think of it. But somewhere in that park, they ought to put like a little triangular shaped plaque, just engraved, talking a little. There's been a lot of people's history. The Communist Party.
Of course.
This
the
was
Red Hills, Silverlake were the Red Hills.
But we should have a little bit more public signage.
But Mark, my question would be, who's gay? Who's they? Because I think we are failing as a community to get the message out. There's no question of that in my mind. If people don't know Harry Hay, I write a column for the Huffington Post, a blog. And I did a blog on Harry Hay, a good one. And the response was virtually, my headline was,
wow.
America's least known civil rights leader, which is true.
And you spoke of that at the dedication of the stairs. I remember you framed it just like that, and I thought that was brilliant.
Well, brilliant or not, we're not getting the message across. And I think we need to concentrate a little more on our reality, our history. We're at a point where we've made huge progress. I have a close friend who's an African-American, very prominent person. And we were talking the other day about our comparative situations, because he said, in all honesty, and to leave Obama out of it, it isn't that per se, but the point is the progress has been huge at many levels. And anyone who's going to be cynical and bitter and say there's no gay progress can go straight to hell as far as I'm concerned, because they're uninformed. There's been huge progress. However, having said that, we have a communications problem that's enormous here, because we're not getting the word out about who we actually are. Our history is buried, but it's not being lived.
Well, I know we have to declare ourselves the People's Republic of Silverlake and
we've got that on tape now.
Mark, you're right.
And have a ministry of propaganda.
I think we've covered a lot, and thank you for the time.